so that was pretty, I mean, I don't think there was any deviation from that view that, that being American is exclusively granted to whites and everybody else has to kind of struggle to get it. And they said their experiences were most similar to those of people of color, especially Latinos. Well, what was interesting when I asked them what is an Arab, they really had trouble answering that question. And, you know, finally, I think most of them actually got it right. They would say, well, it's somebody from an Arab country or somebody who speaks Arabic, and actually Arab is not a racial term. It's a cultural linguistic term, right? It's anybody who speaks Arabic and follows Arab culture. That's what an Arab is. So, but I was wondering, you know, why don't Arab Americans know what an Arab is? But I thought, well, where would they learn about that? I mean, you know, this is not things that are taught. These are not ideas taught in schools. Arabs are the group that are often excluded from the curriculum of schools. Treatment of Arabs and of Muslims is often full of stereotypes, even in the high school textbooks and even in some university textbooks that I've seen. So where would they learn about what is an Arab? Well, they learn about what's an Arab from their daily life. So when I asked what does an Arab mean to, being an Arab mean to you, they say, well, it means believing in family, it believes in, you know, some conservative values, it's about a rich culture and heritage, it's about eating certain foods, it's about liking a certain kind of music. But when it came to being Muslim, everybody was clear on what's Muslim. Muslim is a person who believes in God, follows the Muslim religion, and believes in the Prophet Muhammad. So that was all very clear. And as I reported earlier, the most common first identity for these youth was Muslim. And then more than a third named it as their second identity. So more than 3/4 of the group, you know, for more than 3/4 of the group, Muslim was a very, very strong identity. And these findings are very much in line with the literature, the studies that have been done on other immigrant groups. So one might conclude, just from this preliminary study I did, that Muslim Americans are no different from other second-generation youth who find themselves subject to prejudice and discrimination. But you might wonder, well, what lies in the future for these youth then? Well, again, segment assimilation theory would argue that for them, economic success lies in their future, and that's how success is measured in these immigration studies, making life. Why? Because it says that certain groups in this culture, in this country, even though they're exposed to discrimination and vilification, manage to withstand all of this and come out ahead. And they're able to resist cultures of criminality and oppositional cultures. So what are the resources? Well, money, human and social capital, which means, you know, good jobs and good community, intact families, high level of community solidarity, and ethnic resilience. In other words, preserving the homeland culture is actually becomes a strength that allows these youth to resist efforts to make them feel that they're less than anybody else. And under these kind of community conditions, youth can create positive views of themselves and their culture. And they can reject the inferiority that is being imposed on them from outside. And they can build pride and strength in who they are. So it's interesting that the message behind all this is that building pride and building strength in being Muslim and being Arab and maintaining strong internal community solidarity and maintaining your values is good for American Muslim youth. And in conclusion, while this increasing anti-Muslim sentiment in American society is asking us to tell Muslims to reject themselves and their religion, this in fact would be the worst thing that could happen to these young people. Because the best thing that can happen to them is to build a sense of dignity and a sense of strength in who they are as Muslims. That's it.
The floor is open for questions, people.
Can you talk a little bit more about the idea of global identity and what that might look like?
Well, that's what a global identity is if you feel that the community of which you are a member is not based in a specific place. You know, and this could apply to, I don't know, being gay, being an artist, being a Muslim, right? I mean, I think that people, I don't know, I mean, this is a new area of research, but I think that people may find that they have more in common with other people who share certain, you know, core parts of themselves, no matter where they live. That would be a global identity. And of course, it's internet that's broken that barrier. Because it used to be you have to travel.
Did you find in your study about the gender in India and how culture either one in the United States where, as you said, the country is American and the culture of Islam that we're talking about, where it is negative to follow culture because the parents and people trying to easily be their own self, which they live in half of their life overseas, and now we have different sets. So you find
you know, I didn't, this summer research wasn't long enough for me to kind of keep extensive interviews I'd like to do, but I can tell you from my life of research that girls are expected to be better Arabs or Muslims than boys. I think they're held to stricter rules, and that's kind of a struggle during like high school, but then when they go to college and they start learning about Muslims or Arabs or whatever that is, that they actually develop a stronger affiliation and level of knowledge than boys do, right? So it ends up, the process ends up with the women, and this is why you see so many women activists. I'm almost the second because they've really gone through this process of saying, okay, well, my parents keep telling me I'm this, so I better figure out what this is. And to figure it out, you have to learn, you have to read. And then you kind of like what you read, and then you become stronger in what you read. So that's from like my prior studies. I haven't gotten that far here. Does that sound promising? Okay.
how much social upbringing, like for example, some young man went to Jordan and he said, I like the social strength that is a family that I don't find it here, regardless of the religious status. And he's born here.
Right.
So, people are want to come from overseas here, and he's living here to go live there.
Right.
So, I mean, do you
Aren't
see how
humans
that...
fascinating?
But I'm saying sometimes they find out later on that it's good, the social, but other things are here, good here.
I have an article I published about that topic with Ali Abu Nima, and we talk about circularity. You go there for community and family and a little bit of slower pace, and then you come here for jobs and education, and then you know. But I myself have that feeling. I can't wait to leave. Because I know I'm going to have a better life, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to get more sleep, people are nice, air smells good, right? I mean, I know it's different, and it might be qualitatively, it's a better life. But, there's people have a hard time finding jobs or making the kind of money they need to support their families. The whole world suffers from this economic problem. I should be a good teacher and lure questions out of you, but Yes?
One of the things we talked about was the stereotyping of Muslims, and one of the things that strikes me is that Muslims live in one part of the city, and Jews, and I happen to be Jewish, live in another part of the city, and there's very little contact, it seems to me, between the two. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts about what can be done to increase contact.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, at a different level of organized, like these interfaith groups and things like that. Because I think people don't live in the same neighborhood, they're not likely to interact, but, you know, no matter what. So I think that the organized sector of, you know, Milwaukee's activists have to work on that and organize visits to each other's institutions and discussions together and things like that. I mean, I teach a class on Muslim Americans, but I always take my students to the Jewish Museum. I do that for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is to point out the immense number of similarities that exist between these two groups, both in being castigated, outcasted at certain points in history, and also there's a lot of religious similarities. There's also a lot of similarities in occupations and in histories, you know, peddling, you know, the historical issues. So, so you have to get to, yeah, I mean, I wish I'm not an expert in Milwaukee, actually, so I can't give you a local solution. But the solution to that is local, for sure. Yes? Sorry.
Louise, a specialized question from me. Most of the wars, you know, that we're engaged in are against predominantly Muslim countries, as you know, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, and of course the support of the destruction of the Palestinian people. And yet, what I find when I'm out on some protesting these invasions or wars or occupations, that the Muslim community is very, very minimally, if at all, represented. Is there a reason now?
I'm sorry, where do you see the minimally represented?
At any kind of protest against these wars or invasions or occupations. So, I mean, out on the streets or wherever there's a representation to some kind of group. Usually I'm surprised at how few Muslims kind of show up at these things. Usually it's a bunch of white middle-class people, which may be the problem anyway, but what?
Well, see, I think that's all about this layer of organizing and relationship building, right? I mean, we don't find that in Chicago, for example. Place I know better. This is not how you would describe Chicago at all. The people who are organizing the protests, are they contacting, you know, are the other Muslim organizations, do they work together? Right? You can't just call somebody and say we're protesting the war. You have to build relationships with each other. So I can't diagnose, but I would guess it's a inter-organizational issue. I mean, there's also the case that some people are afraid. They're afraid to come out and so only if you have, you know, a lot of people like you there are you going to feel strong enough. That's what I was saying. Oh, okay.
I was going to ask what your theory on Nadal Hassan is.
On what?
On the
Nadal Hassan?
falsehood.
Well, you know, I only know what was in the media, and there was some pretty extensive coverage of him. Nadal Hassan was born here, secular kid, I think. Anyhow, he joined the military. He went to medical school in the military, so he's a career military officer. And his job was to counsel persons suffering from post-traumatic stress who are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And he spent 3 years counseling vets coming back and up in Bethesda, counseling people who were describing horrible, horrible scenes in their nightmares